There's a silent architecture to your suffering, a design so precise, so perfectly hidden, that you mistake it for fate. You believe you want to be successful, to be loved, to be free. But a part of you, a part you refuse to meet, is deeply invested in your own failure. And it's not sabotage, it's protection. Because for your unconscious mind, the known prison is safer than the unknown paradise. So, who is the real architect of your life? And what contract did you sign, at a time you can't even remember, that you are still bound by today? Part I, the veto power of the unseen. There is a creature inside you. Call it a mechanism. Call it an echo. It lives in the space between your conscious decision to change and your body's refusal to move. You say you want love, yet you pick partners who will never truly see you. You say you want creative success, yet you spend 6 hours in a paralysis of perfectionism before you write a single word. You say you want wealth, yet your nervous system freezes when a real opportunity arrives. This is not hypocrisy. It's not a lack of willpower. It is a vote, a veto, cast by a part of your psyche that you didn't elect, yet holds absolute executive power. Think of a thermostat. You can open the windows, bring in a blast of icy air, or light a bonfire on the floor. The room's temperature will spike or drop, but the thermostat has a set point. It will fight your efforts. It will drag the temperature back to what it believes is the baseline for survival. Your nervous system is that thermostat. Your current life is the baseline. It doesn't matter if that life is cold and miserable. The unknown heat of success, of genuine intimacy, of visibility, that feels like a fatal fever to your ancient wiring. So, it vetoes your progress, not because it hates you, but because its only job is to keep the system alive, exactly as it was programmed. The tragedy is that the programming was completed by a child who didn't know how the world worked. And you, as an adult, are still following that child's architectural plan. What we call self-sabotage is really loyalty to a primitive draft of reality, written before you had language. Imagine a house built on a foundation of sand, constructed by a 5-year-old terrified of earthquakes. You, the adult architect, come along with blueprints for a mansion. But the moment you try to dig a new foundation, the terrified child inside triggers a state of emergency. Your heart pounds. Your thoughts race. You suddenly need a distraction, endless scrolling, a sudden craving, a burst of overwhelming doubt. That's not weakness. It's the veto. The child's fear is law, and the law says, any change is a catastrophic earthquake that will kill us. And you obey. Because to disobey feels like death itself. Part 2. The Invisible Tribunal. To understand why you're so stuck, you have to look at where the self is assembled. We pretend the self is born in isolation, a seed that naturally unfolds into a flower. That's a lie. The self is built in a courtroom you've forgotten you were ever in. When you were very small, your psyche wasn't a private room. It was a public square. Your mother's anxiety was a weather system. Your father's repressed disappointment was the ground beneath your feet. The laughter and the screaming of the household were the raw materials of your identity. Imagine a tribunal. You stand before authorities of life and death, your caregivers. They don't just give you rules. They plant a jury inside your head that never dies. They present you with a silent, terrifying demand. Separate yourself. You must exile every impulse that threatens the stability of the household. If sadness makes your mother spin into panic, you learn to amputate sadness. You don't feel it. You translate it instantly into a performance of I'm fine. 3 distinct judges sit on this internal tribunal: the judge of need, the judge of body, the judge of truth. The judge of need learns that needing too loudly gets you banished. You become the person who never asks for help, the hyper-independent one holding the world up. that independence isn't freedom. It's a life sentence to exhaustion. The judge of body learns that your spontaneous, animal joy is disgusting or dangerous. Your loud laugh, your desire to run naked, your sensuality, they lock it away. You become rigid, controlled, a floating head detached from the neck down. The judge of truth learns that your wildest emotions are weapons. You lock up your rage in a deep dungeon, and it festers there, becoming a toxic swamp of resentment that leaks out quietly, poisoning everything. You succeeded in that trial. You separated yourself. You were found innocent of being too much, but the sentence for that innocence was a lifetime of fragmentation. You fragmented to survive the trial, and you forgot you were ever broken apart. That is the true cost of your adapted, perfect, nice personality. And the courtroom never adjourned. It is in continuous session, and you are still on trial. Every time you try to speak a difficult truth or set a boundary, the old judges bang their gavels, and you fall silent, guilty again for crimes you never committed, only felt. Part 3. The Unmarked Grave. We must revisit a word Jung used, but with a sharper lens. The shadow. We think of it as the dark alley of our psyche, the place where bad things go. But that's a dangerous misunderstanding. The shadow is an unmarked grave. It's where you buried not just your sins, but your gold. In a dimly lit laboratory, a scientist placed a kitten. The room was painted with vertical stripes. The kitten lived its critical early weeks in this vertical world. Then, it was moved to a room painted only with horizontal stripes. The kitten, now fully grown in its optical wiring, was functionally blind. It could not see the horizontal lines. Its brain hadn't built the necessary receptors. It would crash into the furniture, helpless. You possess psychological blindness of exactly this kind. Your early environment was the vertical striped room. The things that weren't permitted weren't just hidden. Your brain deleted the neural software required to perceive them. This is the shattered self. Not a suppressed self, deeply buried, but a self broken into shards you no longer recognize as yours. Your explosive, righteous anger? You don't see it as a life force that would let you finally set a boundary. You see it as a threat to your existence, so you swallow it until it becomes a tumor of depression. Your radiant, erotic creativity? You don't see it as the electrical current of your life. You see it as a dangerous, shameful perversion. So you starve it until it transforms into a gnawing sense of meaninglessness. The shadow is not your trauma. It is the act of self-exile resulting from the trauma. The trauma was the event. The shadow is the decision you made, as a child, to eject a piece of your own soul, because the world told you it was unlovable. And now, you spend your days searching. Searching for the profound feeling of aliveness you can't name. Not realizing you're searching for the pieces of yourself you threw away. The graveyard is full of your own unwept sobs, your unsung songs, your unwritten letters of fury, and the silence from that grave is what you call emptiness. It's not emptiness. It's a crowd of buried selves waiting for a resurrection. Part IV, the psychic economy of projection, and then comes the re-triggering. The universe, in its harsh, perfect pedagogical way, doesn't let you sleep in your cozy, blind exile. It sends a messenger. This messenger is called the projection. Projection is not just seeing your flaws in others. It's the hallucination of your exiled selves. The aggression you carry but have banned from your identity. You will find it in the world. You will work for a boss who seems to rage with a cruelty that feels almost intimate. You will attract a partner whose quiet, cutting criticism feels designed specifically for your rawest wounds. You don't realize you're not just seeing them. You're meeting the exiled parts of yourself wearing a human costume. They walk around in other people's bodies, and you either hate them or fall obsessively in love with them. You're drawn to the arrogant because they carry your unclaimed confidence. You're repulsed by the helpless because they mirror the wounded child you locked in the basement and swore to never become. This is the economy of shadows. A transaction is taking place. You give away your power, and they carry it. You give away your vulnerability, and they weaponize it. The people who trigger you the most violently are not your enemies. They are the holders of your own lost property. They are the psychopomps, the soul guides, showing you, with brutal clarity, exactly what you must reclaim to become whole. The person who makes you feel the most invisible? They carry your own discarded powerful voice that you are terrified to use, because speaking your truth once got you annihilated. And if you cut them off without doing the work, you've learned nothing. The universe will simply send the same lesson in a new body. The script will be the same. The economic exchange will simply begin again with a new debtor. The only escape is to pay back your own debt to your soul and repossess what you've been projecting onto the world. This is not New Age spirituality. It is the precise mechanical law of the unconscious. Until you own your own denied cruelty, you will date it. Until you own your own denied brilliance, you will work for it and resent it. The economy is flawless. Part V, the identity bargain. This brings us to the most sophisticated defense the psyche has. Not repression, but a bargain. We call it the identity bargain. It's a legal settlement you signed in childhood to mitigate the pain of fragmentation. It's essentially a promise: I will never be X if you guarantee I never feel Y again. It's a brilliant, life-saving piece of psychological law, but with a ruinous price. Look closely at your proudest labels. The good one, the smart one, the performer, the savior. They are not identities. They are high-interest loans with a predatory lender. A man, once the parentified child of an alcoholic mother, develops an identity as the reliable one. His entire self-worth is a fortress built on never dropping the ball. The deal was, I will be endlessly reliable, and in return, I will never feel the bottomless terror of a chaotic, unpredictable home. For 30 years, he wins. He's a CEO, a pillar, a rock, but the loan is recalled. He has a panic attack in a meeting that isn't even high stakes. He is baffled. He is the reliable one. Panic is for the unreliable. The panic is the loan shark. The panic is the exiled chaos he locked away to become the reliable one, now pounding on the cellar door with a battering ram. The chaos didn't die. It just grew, in the dark, with interest. The strongest part of him was never the whole truth. It was just the most legally defensible argument against his true, terrified, messy humanity. That's the identity bargain. An overdeveloped muscle used to compensate for a completely atrophied one. Until the body, the great truth teller, brings the whole structure down with a symptom. A migraine, a paralysis, a sudden, unexplainable sexual obsession. The body doesn't honor the bargain. The body always collects the debt. And what are you paying for? The guarantee that you will never be vulnerable again. The guarantee that you will never be shamed again. But the price is your aliveness. Every time you hold back your true opinion to maintain your nice person identity, you make a payment of self-betrayal. Every time you overwork to prove you're the competent one, you drain a little more of your life force into the bank of a false god. This bargain is the real reason you feel like an imposter. The imposter isn't the one who fears being discovered as a fraud. The imposter is the bargain itself, masquerading as your whole personality. Part VI. The strange loyalty to the graveyard. Let's get even more specific. Why do we stay? Why do you, an intelligent adult, with all the resources and information of the modern world, keep betraying yourself? It's not stupidity. It's an ancient loyalty. The psychoanalytic tradition called it, in one context, the loyalty to the dead. But let's be wider. It's a loyalty to the graveyard of your old family rules. You are loyal not even to your actual parents, but to the internalized commandments they passed down, bruised and battered from their own unlived lives. We don't connect. We don't feel too much joy. We don't leave the tribe. We don't outshine the parent. To break these rules feels like psychological murder. When you try to build a life that is radically happier than your mother's, a hidden saboteur emerges. A guilt so dense it feels like vertigo. To have a peaceful, erotic, joyful marriage when your parents lived in emotional isolation feels like a betrayal. You feel, in your bones, it is forbidden. This is the loyalty system, and it serves a hidden logic. You believe that by remaining miserable in the specific way your family was miserable, you are keeping the connection alive. Your depression is a handshake with the ghost of your father's depression. Your anxiety is a long-distance phone call with your mother's terror. You're not sick. You're loyal. And the only thing that scares you more than staying stuck is the catastrophe your psyche predicts will happen if you dare to be free. The total annihilation of the bond, followed by a fall into an abyss of aloneness so profound, the ego cannot imagine surviving it. The loyalty to the dead is far stronger than the desire to be fully alive. There is a terrible safety in generational suffering. It is a shared language. When you begin to heal, you become an alien to your own family. The old jokes don't land. The familiar complaints sound hollow. You no longer fit the narrative slot that was carved for you before you were born. And so, a terrifying choice looms. Keep the connection by amputating your new growth. Or keep the growth and risk the profound aloneness of being the first free person in your bloodline. Many choose the amputation, not because they hate themselves, but because the primitive brain equates exile with death. And facing that death, consciously and voluntarily, is the crossing that very few dare to make. Part 7. Returning to the crime scene. So where does the alchemical repair begin? Not in a peaceful therapist's office of the mind, but in what we can call the somatic crime scene. The body is not a meat suit carrying your brain. The body is the unconscious mind, mapped in muscular armor. Your father's harsh criticism didn't just create a belief. It created a slight, permanent caving in of your chest. Your mother's unpredictable rage didn't just make you anxious. It wired your neck and shoulders into a state of permanent low-grade bracing for an impact that ended 30 years ago, but has never been turned off. You have to return to the crime scene, not to retell the story, but to refeel the unfinished act. This is the dangerous work. The psyche is a closed circuit of energy. The electric charge of that moment you wanted to scream and didn't. The moment you wanted to run and stayed frozen. The moment you wanted to fight and collapsed into despair. That energy didn't go anywhere. It is stored. It is a loop. A broken record of an action potential. It is trapped in the body's fascia, in the chronic shallow breathing, in the slightly too fast resting heart rate that your doctor calls genetics. The turning point isn't in understanding this. It is in discharging it. A revelation is just a thought. A full body, shuddering sob is a completion of a motor sequence that was suspended. A slow, deliberate push against a wall, engaging all your neglected muscles, can complete a defensive impulse that was frozen years ago. You are not remembering the lion that attacked you. You are releasing the psoas muscle that still holds the shape of flight. We are physical beings. The animal kingdom understands this immediately. An antelope outruns the cheetah, and as soon as it is safe, it shakes violently, discharging the entire life-threatening event from its nervous system. Humans override this shake with shame and stoicism. We lock the trauma in our architecture and then call our rigid posture a personality. The shift moves from an intellectual archaeology to a visceral reclamation of the body's interrupted story. This is not about re-traumatization. It's about titration, a slow, safe, nervous system-guided release of the trapped energy. When the charge in your shoulders finally unwinds in a tremor, when the breath that was held since you were 7 finally exhales fully, the narrative in your mind often changes automatically. The story of I am unworthy no longer has a somatic anchor. Without the physical signature, the thought becomes a ghost, and it eventually dissolves. The mind follows the body. The body is the back door to the prison built by the mind. Part the 8, the synthesis of monsters and saints. And then, a new landscape emerges. Integration, a dangerous word, often misunderstood. Integration is not becoming good. It is not converting your demons into angels. It is a radical act of assembly. Imagine a conference room in a high tower. This room is your conscious self. You decide to invite every exiled part of you to a meeting, not for them to behave, but for them to be seen. The judge of body is invited, and you listen without flinching as it describes its disgust for your physical form. Pure information, not truth. The judge of truth, the fury, is invited, and you let it slam its fists on the table and speak of the 1,000 injustices it has catalogued. Integration is not letting the fury drive the bus and punch out your boss. That's mere discharge. Integration is listening to the fury's data, the boundary that was crossed, the violation not acknowledged, and saying, you are not the executive, but you are the perfect minister of justice. I will now use your energy to calmly and powerfully set a boundary without burning the building down. That is synthesis. The tyrant and the peacemaker are not killed in a civil war. They are brought into a coalition government. Your public persona goes from being a brittle, fragile mask to being a flexible, skilled diplomat for a rich and powerful, if volatile, internal nation. This creates a new kind of human. Someone whose dangerousness is integrated. A gentle person who is not a pushover, because they are fully in contact with their capacity for lethal force and have fully owned it, making its use a conscious choice, not a suppressed eruption. A kind person whose kindness isn't a surrender for safety, but a genuine offering from a place of overflowing power. You become a person who is not defined against something, but built from everything you are. The opposite of fragmentation is not unity, but a dynamic, vibrant, multi-voiced wholeness. This inner coalition governs with a new constitution. The constitution has a clause, every part has a voice, but no single part has veto power over the whole life. The part that wants to hide and eat cake all day is heard, comforted, but not put in charge of the calendar. The part that wants to burn every bridge in a rage is heard, validated for its pain, but not given the keys to the flamethrower. This is maturity, not the silencing of the self, but the conscious orchestration of a self that is many, yet one. And from this place, you don't just react to life. You participate in it. You become the conductor, not the panicked violin. Part IX, the boring miracle of agency. Here's the part no one talks about. When the old defensive architecture collapses, what rushes in isn't a constant state of euphoric bliss. It's boredom, a strange, quiet, unfamiliar stillness. For years, your interior was a war room, a constant negotiation with the veto, with the tribunal, with the judges. There was a strange, addictive drama to it, the crisis of the week, the self-sabotage and redemption cycle, the obsessive rumination over other people's opinions. That was your normal. It was painful, but it was a job. It kept you busy. When that job disappears, what's left is a silence that can feel initially terrifying. You wake up, and there's no emergency. You go to a social event, and you don't have to perform. You face a challenge, and your mind provides a clear, calm choice, without the suffocating background noise of 1,000 fears. This is agency. Not the sexy, cinematic decision to storm the castle, but the quiet, daily, mundane miracle of being able to choose without a gun to your head. You can leave the party because you're tired, not because you're panicked. You can say I love you without needing it back, because you're already sourced from within. You can start the project because the creative force in you wants to speak, not because you're running from a fear of being a failure. This is freedom. And it feels at first like a vast, empty plain. You must learn to walk in it. And that relearning is the real work of becoming human. Part X. The final permission. So we arrive at the ultimate anticlimax of healing. It is not a feeling of ecstatic joy. It is a quiet, boring, profound sense of permission. Permission is the antidote to the tribunal. The tribunal said, "You may not exist in this way." Permission is the deep, cellular level granting of your own right to be. It is a permission to be ugly. And by that I mean to be unphotoshopped. To say the wrong thing and course correct with grace instead of self-flagellation. To desire something stupid and pursue it anyway, because your soul doesn't speak in the dry language of 5-year plans. It is a permission to change your mind. The old loyalty to the mask says you must be consistent, a believable character in the fictional story you told people about yourself. Permission says you are a process, a river, a biological truth, and a river doesn't apologize for carving a new bank. It is a permission to outgrow the people whose love was predicated on you staying small. This is the most painful one. Your terror was never about you being not good enough. The terror, the true, shivering terror down to the bones, is that you are too much, too powerful, too brilliant, too vast for the small container your family or origin created for you. Permission is finally choosing the terror of your own vastness over the comfort of their limited imagination of you. And finally, it is a permission to fail. The mask was an elaborate suicide prevention device. It was a guarantee against shame. But shame is just the echo of the tribunal. Permission to fail is a declaration of independence from the jury. It means your worth is not a fragile object that shatters when you drop it. It is a living root, and it feeds itself from the dark soil of your defeats, as much as from the sunshine of your victories. This is not grandiosity. It is the bedrock of genuine humility. Only a person who has given themselves full permission to be utterly ordinary can ever risk true greatness. The others are just performing a costume drama of confidence, terrified of the curtain call. Part C. The quiet homecoming. Closing reflection. The mask didn't fall off in a violent, cinematic explosion. That's a myth. It dissolved one Tuesday afternoon, in the most unremarkable moment. You were washing a dish, looking at a cloud out the window. No grand crisis at hand. And you felt it. A presence. A familiar, yet utterly strange, sense of quiet. There was no inner commentator. No strategizing for the next character to play. No exhausting, frantic work of being you. And for the first time, you weren't afraid of the void. You realized the mask had been hiding not a monster, but a silence that was full. A dense, living, silent presence that had been there the entire time, patiently waiting for the performance to be over. You had spent your life terrified of being exposed. But in that moment, you met the original self behind the architecture. And it wasn't the fragile, shameful thing you had been protecting. It was the immovable, quiet force that had been breathing life into the performance all along. You hadn't been protecting a weak self. You had been protecting a self so powerful, its full expression would instantly break the delicate, false world others had built for you. So you hid it. Until this Tuesday, when the performance ended, not with applause, but with a peace so deep, you knew you would never need to check your lines again. The architecture that once held you captive had become visible, and in seeing it completely, without flinching, you reclaimed the authorship. You were no longer a character in a child's survival play. You were the playwright, the stage, the audience, and the actor, all at once. And the only plot from now on was the one that unfurled from your deep, quiet, and finally undivided